Welcome back to Martial Arts in Chinese Literature and Films. In this lecture, we'll talk about one of China's most famous epic novels, Romance of Three Kingdoms, 三国演义. We'll discuss some legendary characters from the novel, the themes of the book as related to this class, as well as the cultural universe surrounding the novel. In the historical review from last week, we have introduced that many warlords rose to power during the fall of the Han Dynasty in the late 2nd century or early 3rd century. Eventually, three kingdoms, Wei, Shu, Wu, remained. This history is the subject of The Romance of Three Kingdoms, a novel that appeared over 1,000 years after the Three Kingdoms period itself. A major source of The Romance of Three Kingdoms is the Chronicle of Three Kingdoms, 三国志. This chronicle was compiled by Chen Shou during the Western Jin Dynasty in the second half of the 3rd century. Chen Shou based his chronicle on earlier historical accounts about the Three Kingdoms. Romance of Three Kingdoms also drew its inspiration from a long tradition of folk stories and theatrical performances featuring Three Kingdoms heroes. During the Song Dynasty, street storytelling became a widespread form of entertainment in the vibrant urban culture of the period. Three Kingdoms legends were popular topics among the storytellers. Later, during the Mongol Yuan Dynasty, theatrical performances known as variety plays or 杂剧 flourished in urban centers such as the Yuan capital Dadu, modern-day Beijing. These plays often featured stories about Three Kingdoms heroes. Romance of Three Kingdoms thus emerged as a continuation of a long cultural tradition. The book's author has been said to be Luo Guanzhong, about whom very little is known. The current consensus is that he lived during the transitional decades between the Yuan and the Ming dynasties, roughly from the 1320s to 1400. Another theory is that the book was written by Shi Nai'an, who is more commonly acknowledged as the author of another famous novel, Outlaws of the Marsh, 水浒传. According to the research of modern scholars, Shi Nai'an was born in 1296 and died in 1372. Or, some said that Luo Guanzhong was a student of Shi Nai'an's, and there's a likelihood that The Romance of Three Kingdoms was co-authored by both of them. To a modern reader, it might be puzzling that the authorship of such a famous novel remains so vague. The historical reason for this ambiguity was that vernacular novels such as The Romance of Three Kingdoms were looked down upon in the cultural mainstream of the time. Throughout China's traditional period, the language that was deemed proper for writing is Classical Chinese or Wenyan, which is a very concise form of language quite different from colloquial expressions. The colloquial or the vernacular language was not supposed to be written out or treated as serious literature. Therefore, writers of vernacular fictions tended to publish their works anonymously. For this reason, the authorship of traditional vernacular novels is often a matter of debate among modern scholars. Even when there's a consensus about authorship, the writer being identified is often an obscure figure about whom little is known. Yet, despite its lowly cultural status, during China's last two imperial dynasties, the Ming Dynasty and the Qing Dynasty, vernacular novels became a popular literary form. Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Outlaws of the Marsh, 水浒传, which is now commonly attributed to Shi Nai'an, were both widely read among readers in Ming-Qing China. Other famous vernacular novels include The Journey to the West, 西游记, attributed to a 16th century author Wu Cheng'en, and The Dream of the Red Chamber, 红楼梦, by Cao Xueqin, who lived during the 18th century in Qing Dynasty. All these books I've mentioned are massive, multi-volume narratives, typically having 100 to 120 chapters. During the traditional Ming-Qing period, these books were transported to Japan and Korea and became very influential in these East Asian cultures. They remain widely read today in China and East Asia. Oftentimes, modern Chinese readers refer to Romance of Three Kingdoms, 三国演义, Outlaws of the Marsh, 水浒传, The Journey to the West, 西游记, and Dream of the Red Chamber, 红楼梦, as the four classical novels, 四大古典小说, or four masterworks, 四大名著. Stories from these books inspired numerous plays in traditional theater such as Peking opera. During the modern period, these books are continuously adapted into TV dramas, films, comic books, animations, and even video games. From the past to the present, famous figures and events in these books are also frequently featured in Chinese decorative art and handcrafts, thus assuming an iconic visual presence in Chinese culture. Interestingly, for the purpose of our class, it's worth noting that 3 of these 4 classical novels feature martial subjects. The only exception is The Dream of the Red Chamber, which is a novel of manners focusing on the life of young women in a Qing dynasty aristocratic household. The 3 earlier novels all center on the image of martial heroes and their epic battles, and they all have a historical basis. We have mentioned that the Romance of Three Kingdoms portrays warfare during and after the fall of the Han Dynasty. Outlaws of the Marsh is based on a historical event from the Northern Song Dynasty, depicting Robin Hood-like bandits who were forced to be outlaws under a corrupt government. Finally, The Journey to the West is a fantastic retelling of the Tang Dynasty monk Xuanzang's travel to India for Buddhist scriptures during the early 7th century. In this fictional version of the pilgrimage, Xuanzang is protected by several supernatural disciples led by the legendary Monkey King against the myriad demons he encounters on the way. We'll read the Monkey King's background story in the book next week. So, despite their obscure beginnings, vernacular novels such as Romance of Three Kingdoms have become a treasured cultural heritage. Then how did these books come into being in the first place? We have mentioned the question of authorship, so all we can offer now is speculation. One reasonable assumption is that the authors of these books were educated scholars who failed to advance in the intensively competitive civil examinations, or only managed to obtain minor official posts. They turned to writing vernacular novels, a literary form deemed improper by the cultural establishment, might be related to their frustration with the status quo, their quest for literary innovation, or commercial motives for making a living. First, regarding the civil examinations, or keju, we have introduced in earlier lectures, it became the prevalent system for selecting government officials during the Song Dynasty. Due to the traditional gender ideology of inner-outer distinction, these exams were only open to men. Yet other than this gender limitation, it was theoretically open to men from all social classes, including the peasant class. For wealthy families, educating their sons to succeed in the civil examinations was also of utmost significance for maintaining the family's status and prosperity. So, to succeed in these exams became the primary ladder of success in traditional Chinese society and was considered an educated man's ultimate destiny. During China's last two dynasties, Ming and Qing, these civil examinations became incredibly rigid, complicated, and competitive. In the 19th century, for instance, millions of men participated in these exams, competing for a few hundreds of titles and positions. The rate of examination failure was extremely high, creating a huge surplus of literary energy. The impersonal, rigid examination system also left many educated men feeling alienated and frustrated, and subsequently turning away from orthodoxy thought in search of new ideas. Likely some of them became writers of vernacular fiction, and many of them became avid readers of this new literary form. Another related context for the flourishing of vernacular novels was the development of commercial publishing. Throughout the transitional period up to around the 18th century, China remained one of the world's most economically developed regions. Columbus' accidental encounter with the American landmass was owing to his search for the legendary wealth of China and Asia, as reported by the earlier traveler Marco Polo. In order to compete against the rivaling navigators establishing an eastward maritime route to China during the late 15th century, Columbus boldly pursued a westward route based on his miscalculation of the Earth's circumference, completely unaware of the New World in the way. After Columbus accidentally quote-unquote discovered the Americas, the Europeans gradually colonized the new continent and wiped out the indigenous populations through disease and wars. During the 16th century, or China's Ming Dynasty, several maritime routes were established between Europe and Asia, both eastward around Africa's Cape of Hope and westward via the American landmass. Meanwhile, a large quantity of silver was discovered in Central and South America. Since silver was the primary currency in Ming-Qing China, much of this New World wealth traveled across the world to China in exchange of globally popular goods such as porcelain, silk, and in the 18th century to England in particular, tea. Later, we'll revisit this international trade network as a precondition of the Opium War of the 1840s. Here, from a side angle, they reflect the incredible commercial power of Ming-Qing China roughly from the 15th to the 18th century. Yet, during these centuries, cultural exchanges between Europe and China remain very limited. European Christian missionaries from various Catholic orders began to arrive in China since the 16th century, yet they fell short of converting the royal house of the Ming or Qing dynasty or a significant portion of the populace, who for the most part follow a mix of traditional teachings including Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. The center of Ming China's commercial development was the Jiangnan or Lower Yangtze area, which remains China's most economically advanced region today. Many urban centers emerged in the area, and many families of the region accumulated significant wealth. In this context, urban and commercial activities flourished, creating a considerable book market. Consequently, private publishers became a prominent cultural presence in the Lower Yangtze region and other developed areas of Ming China. In an earlier lecture, we mentioned that printing technology became more and more widespread since the Song dynasty around the 10th century. Yet during the Ming dynasty, the growth of commercial printing could be described as explosive. As a result, Chinese society entered an information revolution of sort. The flourishing of vernacular novels took place in this context of information and publication revolution. Indeed, if their initial creation depended on the visions and talents of specific authors, the popularity they were able to achieve in Chinese culture had much to do with the publication market. Notably, whereas Romance of Three Kingdoms and Outlaws of the Marsh could have been written as early as the 14th or 15th century, the earliest existing versions of these books are both printed books dating to the 16th century. This is also the century during which The Journey to the West, 西游记, was written and published. In addition to the conditions created by commercial publishing, the rise of vernacular novels was further related to the rise of new intellectual trends. We have mentioned that the rigid examination system alienated many educated men of the period, leaving them feeling marginalized and discontented. Meanwhile, commercial and material developments also generated greater socioeconomic mobility and destabilized established conventions. Corresponding to these shifts in China, a more progressive wing of Confucianism called philosophy of the heart-mind, 心学, gained more and more social influence. Simply put, philosophy of the heart-mind proposes that the ultimate truth resides within the individual mind or conscience. This theory drew its foundation from Mengzi's argument on the inherent goodness of human nature. In the intellectual context of the time, philosophy of the heart-mind or 心学 was an argument against Neo-Confucianism or 理学, philosophy of reason or philosophy of principle, which remained the dominant intellectual tradition from the Song to the Ming and Qing dynasties. In its basic principle, Neo-Confucianism emphasizes three cardinal relations as the three constants, or 三纲, that is, relations between sovereign and minister, between father and son, and between husband and wife. Neo-Confucianism treats the hierarchies embedded in these relations as moral absolutes ordained by heaven. It thus promoted a more rigid, conservative form of social system. In contrast, philosophy of the heart-mind focuses more on individual conscience or good knowing, 良知, rather than social hierarchies per se. It thus allowed more room for individual agency beyond the given hierarchies. Even though the majority of scholars following the philosophy of the heart-mind still adhere to basic Confucian values, some more radical or progressive members of the group promoted visions of individual freedom ahead of their time. The most famous of these progressive thinkers is Li Zhi. One of his best-known essays is titled On the Childlike Mind, 同心说, which argues that society has fallen under the control of phonies and hypocrites and gone corrupt. Only a child's mind, prior to social corruption, is the purest of all. Another famous idea of Li Zhi's is that cardinal relations and the reason of this world are all about having clothes to wear and having food to eat. 穿衣吃饭即是人伦物理. By this argument, he went against Confucianism's general trend to suppress material desire. In his view, there are desires that are legitimate and authentic and hence inherently good. Li Zhi titled one of his books A Book to Burn, 焚书, which evokes first Emperor of Qin's burning of books, meaning that his thought would be censored and persecuted by authorities. Indeed, local authorities were long wary of him. Eventually, they found an excuse to arrest him when he was in his 70s. Li Zhi committed suicide in prison as his final gesture of protest. Li Zhi represents the new intellectual trend of the late Ming period, an intellectual trend that is more critical of social and political authorities, and in turn more affirmative of the individual's own agency and freedom. We can observe similar trends in the vernacular novels that flourished during the time. In fact, Li Zhi's name sometimes appears on printed copies of these novels as a commentator. Even though these attributions are not necessarily true, they indicate a strong resonance between Li Zhi's unconventional thought and the contents of these novels. Considering Chinese intellectual history as a whole, Li Zhi's thought is a continuation of an alternative, independent subculture within the tradition. On a theoretical level, this subculture puts into question the utopian ideal in the culture of Wen at the foundation of Confucianism. If we may recall, this culture of Wen is built on ideal sage king images, such as that of King Wen of the Zhou dynasty. We have characterized an underlying principle of this utopian ideal of the sage king as power equals virtue. That is, the world is ruled by a virtuous power and all is right. However, we have observed that even Confucius acknowledged that he was living in a fallen, dystopian age far removed from the sage king ideal. Later, from the first emperor of Qin to Emperor Wu of Han, acts of imperial tyranny also cast doubts on the moral relevancy of political power. Sima Qian, the historian persecuted by Emperor Wu of Han, is a pioneer in explicitly pointing out the dissonance between political power and virtue. He thus claimed the right to moral judgment as an intellectual and a historian by commemorating those who failed to assume actual power or achieve actual success, but were heroes nonetheless for their courage, integrity, and determination. Li Zhi's thought has a clear connection to Sima Qian's. Other than A Book to Burn, another book by him is titled A Book to Keep Hidden, 藏书. This title refers to Sima Qian's statement in his postface to historical records, where he says that he will hide the book from the present authorities and leave it to the judgment of future generations. In short, from the original Confucius to Sima Qian to Li Zhi, there is a continuous intellectual tradition of questioning the correspondence between moral authority and social and political authorities. If the world is not necessarily ruled by sage kings, each person should be his or her own sage king. Moreover, this line of thought indicates that one's true moral character is determined not by adhering to ritual hierarchies or propriety on the outside, but by authentic feelings and intentions, that is, by truthfulness, 真, and sincerity, 诚. In vernacular novels from ancient China, we can observe these intellectual trends of the period, including a heavier emphasis on individual agency, authentic feelings, and unconventional characters. Regarding the theme of our class, we have mentioned that the value of Wu and warrior characters are generally marginalized in the Chinese tradition, which is dominated by the value of Wen. Thus, literary pieces featuring martial topics often express views divergent from the mainstream culture. Sima Qian's biographies of assassins is an earlier example. Now, corresponding to the new intellectual trends of the Ming Dynasty, martial heroes also became the protagonists of vernacular novels, which, despite their lowly cultural status, gained great popularity among readers of the time. These novels featuring martial heroes set in dystopian historical backgrounds. Outlaws of the Marsh, 水浒传, for instance, explicitly celebrates bandits and rebels against a corrupt government. As the bandit force's motto goes, they are administering justice on behalf of heaven, 替天行道, when the legal system itself goes awry. The subject of Romance of Three Kingdoms is not as radical, yet it represents a pivotal moment in Chinese history when the Han Empire, the imperial center over 400 years, disintegrated. In last week's historical overview, we have mentioned that many warlords emerged in this process, and China remained divided for centuries after the Three Kingdoms period. Amidst the chaos during the fall of the Han Dynasty, the question of individual affinities and choices gained extreme urgency, and this question serves as the main theme of Romance of Three Kingdoms. Romance of Three Kingdoms has 120 chapters. It begins with the depiction of the Yellow Turban Rebellion in 184, which built to the fall of the Han Dynasty. The novel ends with the unification of the Three Kingdoms under the Jin Dynasty in 280, after the Sima clan usurped the Wei Dynasty. The book thus covers about a century of historical events and hundreds of historical figures. In terms of its literary design, the central conflict of the novel rests in the struggle between the force of Liu Bei, who later established the Shu dynasty in southwest China, and the force of Cao Cao, who controlled the Han imperial court. After Cao Cao's death, his son Cao Pi established the Wei dynasty, which built the foundation of the Jin unification. During the fall of Han, Cao Cao was the most powerful warlord. The Wei dynasty founded by his son was the strongest of three kingdoms, and its power was inherited by the Jin dynasty that completed the unification. If we must pick a winner of history from the three kingdoms, Cao Cao or the kingdom of Wei would be the most suitable candidate. However, rather than glorifying Cao Cao's victory, Romance of Three Kingdoms places its literary energy on celebrating heroes belonging to Liu Bei's force. Liu Bei was the founder of the Kingdom of Shu, which was militarily the weakest among the three kingdoms. Indeed, the Kingdom of Shu was conquered by Wei as early as 263. Nevertheless, continuing Sima Qian's tradition of commemorating those who failed in history, the Romance of Three Kingdoms presents Liu Bei and his warriors as true heroes for their virtue and integrity. In contrast, Cao Cao and his force are the arch-villains in the novel, despite their eventual victory. To an extent, the Romance of Three Kingdoms' promotion of Liu Bei is due to his kinship connection with the Han imperial house. That is, he was a remote relative of the Han emperor, even though his lineage has fallen into obscurity and poverty. According to the principle of hereditary succession in a dynastic system, Liu Bei's claim to power is more legitimate than those who had no relation at all to the Han royal lineage. Beyond this more conservative reason, the novel also emphasizes Liu Bei's benevolence. Many times it portrays Liu Bei's kindness and genuine concerns for the populace. The novel even bestows upon Liu Bei deified physical features such as extraordinarily large earlobes, which represent sagehood and wisdom. All in all, Liu Bei's image emerges in the novel as that of a latter-day sage king, or an ideal Confucian leader born in an age of chaos. Famously, Romance of Three Kingdoms begins with Liu Bei's encounter with two of his most loyal warriors, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, as his sworn brothers, or Yidi. In Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, we have seen sworn brotherhood as a very serious bond. For their moral obligations to this bond, two protagonists, Li Mubai and Yu Xiulian, refrain from expressing their romantic feelings to one another. The Chinese term for sworn brotherhood is literally 结义, or the bond of integrity. This very term indicates its demand on individuals to make sacrifices to honor its code. The sworn brotherhood of Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei, who simply came to be known as Liu Guanzhang in Chinese culture, is the most famous of such a bond, and we'll soon see why. From the perspective of cardinal relations, the bond of sworn brotherhood is an interesting crossover of brotherhood and friendship. Moreover, we need to keep in mind that Liu Bei's relation to Guan Yu and Zhang Fei is in fact that between the sovereign and the ministers. However, as represented in the novel, their sense of brotherhood to each other is so intense that we now rarely think of that political hierarchy between them. This pattern deviates from the more fixed sovereign-minister relations in the traditional imperial system, as it underscores the importance of individual affinity in making political affiliations. As the story in the novel goes, Liu Bei encountered his two brothers purely by chance. He first met Zhang Fei when the latter, a warrior and a wealthy farmer, overheard him sign in front of the court's public notice to call for militias to fight against the Yellow Turbans. Zhang Fei immediately understood Liu Bei's aspirations and learned that he was related to the imperial family. Zhang Fei subsequently volunteered to team with Liu Bei to form a militia force. Later, they met Guan Yu when they were drinking together in an inn. Guan Yu announced that he was in a haste as he traveled to join the army to fight against the rebels. He also revealed that he had recently killed a ruffian who was rich and powerful. Liu Bei and Zhang Fei immediately befriended him. Then the three visited Zhang Fei's farm together, where they proposed to become sworn brothers. Then, as their famous oath goes, we swear to serve the state and save the people. We ask not the same day of birth, but we seek to die together. 不求同年同月同日生，但求同年同月同日死. From a realistic perspective, the sworn brotherhood between the three heroes seemed to have taken place all too randomly. However, within the world of the novel, it indicates a sense of destiny and the importance of authentic, spontaneous feelings in forming political bonds during a time of chaos. Moreover, these three heroes bonded over the genuine concerns for the state of the world and the welfare of the people. That is, according to their oath, their common goal is to serve the state and save the people. Thus, their bond represents the fundamental spirit of the bond of integrity, which is to devote oneself to a collective bond and a larger cause. In contrast, the novel portrays Cao Cao as a villain with a crafty, untrustworthy, and self-centered personality. One famous characterization of Cao Cao in the novel is that of a villainous hero, Xiao Xiong. Xiao literally means a ferocious vulture, and by extension, felons or criminals. To an extent, Cao Cao's image embodies the ruthlessness of legalism, since he's capable of sacrificing anyone in his way towards supreme power. However, though cast as the arch-villain, the Cao Cao in the novel is a complex character, just as the historical Cao Cao himself. In fact, the historical Cao Cao never took the step to dethrone the Han Emperor, which occurred after his death under his son Cao Pi. This indicates the constraints of Confucianism in its actions. The historical Cao Cao, along with his sons, were also accomplished poets. There are further indications both in historical records and in the novel about Cao Cao's genuine appreciation of talented ministers and warriors. For instance, we see that in his relation with Liu Bei's sworn brother Guan Yu. In modern adaptations or interpretations, Cao Cao is often reconceived as a more positive character, even as an embodiment of modern ideals of leadership. Whereas Romance of Three Kingdoms retains some character complexity in its representation of Cao Cao, its overall design unambiguously sets up Cao Cao's character as the diametric opposite to that of Liu Bei's. One well-known episode from the novel on Cao Cao's treacherous character is the Lü Boshe incident. Basically, Cao Cao attempted at assassinating a powerful minister at court and was forced to run away when he failed. Escaping along with a friend named Chen Gong, they sought refuge in the house of a past acquaintance of the name Lü Boshe. However, while Lü Boshe left to buy some wine, Cao Cao heard the sound of sharpening knives from the back of the house. He took this as a sign that Lü Boshe had betrayed him and slaughtered everyone left in the family. Yet, after this massacre, he and his friend found a bound pig in the kitchen and realized that the family was in fact planning to slay the pig to prepare a feast for him. In shock, Cao Cao and his friend Chen Gong ran away, only to meet Lü Boshe on his way back home. After a few words of exchange, Cao Cao drew his sword and cold-bloodedly killed Lü Boshe. Frightened and puzzled at this turn of event, his friend Chen Gong asked why Cao Cao would commit such violence. Cao Cao replied that this is to prevent retaliation, followed by a statement that's later often quoted by readers of the novel as a summary of his character. Rather we let down the world than the world let us down. 宁教我负天下人，休教天下人负我。Given Cao Cao's extreme egoism, the novel depicts Liu Bei's struggles against Cao Cao in light of good versus evil. One narrative arc that both enforces and complicates this pattern is Cao Cao's relation with Guan Yu, Liu Bei's second sworn brother. In Chinese culture, Guan Yu is one of the most revered heroes from the Romance of Three Kingdoms. There are many legends about his fearlessness and prowess on the battleground in the novel. However, the episodes that truly deified him as a moral paragon come from his interchanges with Cao Cao after he was captured by Cao Cao's force. Out of his respect for Guan Yu's talents as a great warrior, Cao Cao treated him with ultimate respect, hoping to win his service. Guan Yu was nonetheless unmoved. Eventually, he escaped and embarked on a long and difficult journey to reunite with his sworn brothers, overcoming many fearful foes along the way. Yet, a dramatic twist chapters later in the novel is when Guan Yu re-encountered Cao Cao after the latter was defeated in the critical Red Cliff battle and attempted to escape from the Huarong path Guan Yu was guarding. By that point, Guan Yu could easily capture Cao Cao, which would subsequently destroy Cao Cao's force. However, owing to his gratitude towards Cao Cao's earlier treatment, Guan Yu let Cao Cao go, a decision that resulted in the divided powers of the three kingdoms, and decades later, the kingdom of Wei's conquest of the kingdom of Shu established by Liu Bei. Guan Yu's decision was inexcusable from a political standpoint, but Liu Bei forgave him because of their brotherhood. All these dramatic plots in the novel play out the codes of reciprocity, Bao, and integrity, Yi, in the Chinese tradition. Owing to Guan Yu's thorough embodiment of these values, he became a revered folk god in Chinese culture, assuming roles such as the god of war, the god of wealth, and the god of justice. Even today, you may frequently encounter a shrine honoring Lord Guan in temples in China, or sometimes Chinese restaurants and businesses. Finally, when speaking of the Romance of Three Kingdoms, it's impossible not to mention Zhuge Liang, who's supposed to be the most intelligent man in Chinese history. As portrayed in Romance of Three Kingdoms, Zhuge Liang's intelligence is almost supernatural, characterized by Taoist magic such as fortune-telling. Initially, Zhuge Liang was indeed a Taoist hermit living in the mountains, known by his epithet the Slumbering Dragon, Wolong. He is depicted to wear a long white robe while always waving a white feathered fan, almost like a Taoist immortal. Yet, despite his transcendence from worldly chaos, Zhuge Liang came into Liu Bei's service after the latter visited his mountain cottage 3 times, a story famously known as 3 visits to the thatched hut, 三顾茅庐. Zhuge Liang refused to receive Liu Bei the first 2 times round, yet moved by Liu Bei's sincerity and perseverance, Zhuge Liang finally agreed to meet with him. During this meeting, Liu Bei shed tears when he expressed his worries about the state of the world. This emotional expression further touched Zhuge Liang, motivating him to advance to Liu Bei his prediction of the future of the world. As his prediction goes, you will yield the heaven's favor to Cao Cao in the north, and you relinquish the earth's advantage to Sun Quan in the south. You, general, will hold the human's heart and complete the Trinity. In this dialogue, heaven's favor, 天时, earth's advantage, 地利, and human's heart, 人和, refer to the heaven-earth-human trinity in the utopian ideal of Confucianism. Here, the disintegration of China into 3 kingdoms symbolizes the disintegration of this trinity. What's the most important value left following this disintegration? Heaven's favor indicates political power, and earth's advantage indicates economic wealth. However, to the novel, neither of these is more important than human's heart or people's support. Liu Bei's force in gathering the most loyal and talented warriors and ministers of the age embodies the supreme value of humanity in the novel. After he came into Liu Bei's service, Zhuge Liang accomplished several legendary feats according to the novel. One of them is borrowing arrows on a boat of straw figures, 草船借箭. Predicting the day when there would be a heavy fog, Zhuge Liang filled a boat with straw figures and sent them towards Cao Cao's force when the fog thickened. Cao Cao's army shot numerous arrows into the boat, and Zhuge Liang subsequently took them into possession for his own army. In another famous story known as the Empty Fort Strategy, 空城计, Zhuge Liang leisurely played his zither on the city wall facing the Wei dynasty's invading army, while there was no military force on his side to defend the city. Confused by Zhuge Liang's behavior, and wary of his strategies, the Wei army retreated for fear of ambush in the city. Yet, despite Zhuge Liang's supreme intelligence and the service of great warriors like Guan Yu, Liu Bei's force eventually failed. The novel thus concludes with a deeply tragic vision, which is summed up by a proverb that's repeatedly cited in the novel. Men should remain true to their endeavors, but success or failure is decided by heaven. 谋事在人，成事在天. Still, within this tragic view of history, we can sense a passionate affirmation of the sheer power of human intention and dedication. According to the underlying vision of the Romance of Three Kingdoms, even when these efforts result in failures, they represent the highest values of history in and of themselves. This vision entails the power of emptiness at the heart of the novel. In short, Romance of Three Kingdoms continues the tragic model coming down from Sima Qian's biographies of assassins. Its highlighting of individual affinities and choices echoes the intellectual trend of the philosophy of the heart-mind during the Mingqing period. Next week, we'll look at another famous vernacular novel, The Journey to the West, with a focus on the image of the Monkey King. We'll observe some similar preoccupations and themes in this novel. At the same time, we'll further discuss the prominent element of Buddhism in the book and the novel's comic model, which is still relevant for understanding modern martial arts films.